Greetings, my fellow hunters, and welcome again. And today, as you can probably see from the title down below, we are going to be watching, or rather reviewing, the live-action adaptation of Ghost in the Shell. And as I always say before we begin, let the hunt begin. I know what you guys are thinking. Why am I doing Ghost in the Shell live-action adaptation? Didn't I do a Ghost in the Shell review like a few while ago? And do you think, isn't it going to be kind of similar? And wasn't there a lot of controversy with this movie when it was first announced so many years ago at this point? And I say that, yes, there was quite a bit of controversy to this anime, not to mention Scarlett Johansson being cast as the Major. And now, while I don't mind that, I'll be saving that for later on. But what I'm trying to say is that I really find that the story isn't that bad. Honestly, it takes quite a liberties from other Ghost in the Shell's properties, possibly Standalone Complex and the original, and does hybridize it into its own unique system, which I do find interesting because it's an interesting perspective. And I'll get into that in 1 minute. So yeah, I don't honestly find it that bad of a story. Sure, it's a little complicated, but when is Ghost in the Shell ever simplistic with its philosophical talk about machines and cybernetics and about mixing the two together? Considering, in fact, in this movie... one more second. But yes, I never found that an issue at all with the story. It's fine, and I'll get into it right now. So the story of Ghost in the Shell is this. A young woman had an accident and was put into a new shell, and now she works for the government in a section called Division 9, I think it was, as she is basically an enforcer and basically on tackling cyber crimes against people. As she is doing this, she tries to figure out who she was and in the past, and tries to piece together the past of how or why she was created, the intrigues and the political interludes of the forces behind this, a brother-like figure, spoilers, of who she is. And basically, if you've seen Ghost in the Shell in the original one, you're going to know it's going to take some beats from it. In fact, it takes quite a few, like I said in the original review that it talks about a puppet master that's been basically hacking people. It takes that concept of the puppet master and just basically gives him an actual physical body because the said person, and I'm going to go for spoilers in this review, so skip this part if you don't want to hear it. Basically what happens was that he was a failed subject of, before the Major came about, so he basically hacked all the other... the other people that basically caused him to be like this. Basically a broken machine, and he's basically out for revenge. Now it's down to the Major and her team to basically stop him, all the while, like I said before, uncovering some of her pasts. And this is something I find interesting because, unlike the original, they didn't focus too much on the Major. They only focused on the world, the characters, and the philosophical meanings behind it. It was nothing to do with her past. I don't think, if I remember correctly, the movie ever dealt with who the Major was before she became who she was. That was just maybe like a throw-off question in the original of who I think it was. I have to rewatch it, but I could be wrong. So it was just basically, let's focus on the Major and more on the world. The Ghost in the Shell live-action movie does the little bit difference as it tries to do both. But I personally think trying to both focus on the world and Makoto, or Major if I must be pedantic, kind of makes it feel like there's not enough room for any one of them to grow because they're both competing for time and space. And it's fine. It doesn't help that it's just confusing. And I feel like if you're more of an investment into the series than I am, you'd probably get a bit better than I. But it's not that bad. I'd say its uniqueness blend does give it some uniqueness, and I do like how it does give quite a few throwbacks to the original movie, considering that movie influenced a lot of movies that came afterwards, Matrix and other series, as I could go up and about. But overall, if I want my solid opinion on the Ghost in the Shell live-action movie, it's an okay movie. I wouldn't say it was worth, I know it didn't win those Oscars, but it was an Oscar nominee. It was fine. It wasn't horrible. It was just meh. And I think that's the nicest thing anybody can say about it, because I can't say it's stupendous, because I know I'm going to have fans that are going to say I'm just being, I'm not going to say it, but yeah. Regardless, it's fine. It's a fine series that I couldn't find much fault to get angry at. And I guess that's an okay. Well, we got to go about the characters, and this will be the most controversial part. I'll explain why. Before I discuss about the characters in the series, I want to make a slight controversial comment on this one, and I know I'm going to get some hate for this. I don't think that the characters, the actors, are bad. They weren't miscast, and I feel like they were appropriately cast. Honestly, if you take a moment back and pull away your hatred for them casting a white character to play a interestingly popular character such as the Major, you'd find that, honestly, she looks kind of fine. I never really did find an issue with that. All I cared about was her characters. And for the rest of the cast, they look fairly like their anime counterparts. Sure, they take a couple of liberties here and there with some of them, but over the majority of the time, I could barely find any faults for it. And I feel like people are just hating on it. I don't want to say that. People are just jumping to conclusions because they have a connection to said anime. I know this is a controversial opinion, and I know I'm going to get some hatred for this, saying that, yes, I found that the characters aren't the actors have never been the issue, and I found the casting pretty appropriate. That said, don't want people to get angry. I will have a civil discussion down below in the comments if you want. But please remember, these are my opinions on it, and I sometimes do have controversial opinions. You can disagree with me, that's perfectly fine. If you feel like the characters were purposely did that, you can go. I will not. If you feel like that, and hopefully I can change your mind on it, that's fine. But overall, I want to say that just because they were white, I don't think that was an issue. Scarlett Johansson was a really good actress, and she played the Major perfectly well. I enjoyed it. So yes, with that out of the way, I'm going to basically talk about the characters. Start off with, we will talk about the main protagonist, which is kind of obvious. The Major, played by Scarlett Johansson. And I have to say is that honestly, she fits the character pretty well. There's nothing wrong with her. She plays the Major fine. I couldn't tell much difference between her or the anime counterpart, but there is a slight difference. And as I said back in the story, she's more interested in finding out who she is and the meaning behind. Is she still who she is, even though she's in a different body? Now that's a new one that wasn't explored much in the original movie. It was just basically a one-off question to her partner Bato. So yeah, overall, Scarlett Johansson fairly made the transition from her anime to her live-action counterpart fairly fine. I really feel I say there isn't much. If you like the original, I have not much to complain about. She's just as, I wouldn't say emotionless, but she doesn't emote as much as, say, later incarnations, I believe. But yeah, Scarlett Johansson, perfectly fine as the Major. And Major, perfectly fine. She's really not that different from her counterpart. All I can say. So, next up we have her partner Bato, and just as I said about the Major just a second ago, he fairly made the transition perfectly fine. I saw no issue with him in the anime. In fact, he was still the collective tactical type when compared to the Major, who was more rushing ahead without thinking, but still, he is still basically like himself. There's no issue with him, and I honestly found him pretty good. Yeah, no issue with him. I liked it how they explored how he got those eyes of his. That it was a bit of a spoiler. He got it in an accident when he was trying to get the target. So yeah, it was a nice little backstory on how he got those eyes, and overall, fine. It was okay. Nothing more I can add about it. Given my thoughts on the characters, I honestly don't hate them, because I didn't mind them in my original Ghost in the Shell review, the movie, so I don't really dislike them. They did an admirable job of just trying to bring the characters from the anime to live action, and it was, I'd say, a fairly clean transfer. Again, I can't really complain much in this department, because they're just, like, if you've seen the original Ghost in the Shell movie, you've basically got the same characters here. They're fine. And I don't get all the hullabaloo why people just grow a hissy fit about it. Yes, they're not Asian, but at the same time, I think it kind of fits the story fine. About, are you still the same person even though you're not in the same shell? Claudia. You know what I mean. And honestly, it's fine. It's not the worst, nor is it the best. It's just meh, in my opinion. And I kind of feel like I would rather prefer a meh character than one that's badly written or horrible. And frankly, the cast in all does their job inoffensive. They don't really stand out, nor they do anything horrible. Thank goodness. So overall, my opinions on them is just basically, if you like the originals, you'll find these guys to your liking, is my best answer. And unfortunately, I can't say much about the music either. As I said, I sadly can't remember a single track from the music, even no matter how much I try to remember. I can't name any tracks that stick out in my head. But then again, I think I said I couldn't remember a single track from the original. So, I guess that's something, a bonus, I guess. One could argue, yes, it's a good thing that if a music track doesn't stick out, it's doing its job, but I could also argue that if it's not sticking out, then it's something that I kinda can't talk about much since, that's my job right now. Honestly, if it was bad, I'd talk about it. If it was good, I would talk about it. But because it's so meh, I can't really talk about it. So maybe I'll give it a C if we're trying at least to be dramatic and epic. That's not good, is it? This is really a milquetoast review, isn't it, my hunters? Anyway, off we go again. The final section. So, my final thoughts on the movie. Is it something you should watch? Is it something you should ignore? I don't know. I know, anticlimactic. I talked about how everything was fine, and you'd think it was just, I'd recommend it saying, it's an okay movie, go watch it. And yes, I can say that, and yes, I would say, it's inoffensive, it's not bad. Thank goodness, unlike a certain other movie I'll do one day. Until then, I'll spare it from the hunt. I'll give you a clue. It begins one of my favorite franchises with a certain superpowered alien from another planet that basically does flying and fighting. Anyway, that aside, I don't know. If you're a Ghost in the Shell fan, you probably have already written this movie off as one of the bad movies because of how it butchers the original and basically whitewashes the entire cast. If you're not new to the series, I wouldn't say this was a good series to basically launch yourself off, because I think this movie was made for more of the fans than even the non-viewers. So I don't know. This is one of those rare movies that I could say, give it a watch and I'll let you think about it. But again, you're a fan, you hate it. You're not a new person to this series. I wouldn't recommend this for someone to begin with. I would just say watch the original Ghost in the Shell movie and then come back afterwards and seeing your own opinions change, or you form your own opinions on this whole movie, because even I don't know. And I'm not even a fan of this series, so my opinions could be milquetoast at best. If it was bad, I would say maybe watch it if for the lulz and how bad it is, but it's not bad, nor is it good that I would recommend it just because of how it might inspire you. It's a mediocre movie made for fans that were hopefully going to like it, but had backlashes to certain things, so that already soured a lot of people's tastes in it. I came into it knowing that I'm just going to watch it for the characters, but the characters are just the same as in the movies, so it's difficult to say anything new. It doesn't take any risks. It just does change a few elements about trying to understand the Major's past, but it's so forced into the story sometimes. I just wonder if they should have just did scene from the original movie and just save us this whole mystique and the philosophy, which I know is part of the Ghost in the Shell universe, but for God's sakes, at least try something new. Give her character or something. Make her smile, which she does a little bit, but not too much. But I can give my opinions and I could go on and on forever about what I think, but I just say, you guys watch it, and you let me know down below in the comments on how you thought it was. I personally thought it was an okay movie, something I will never pick up again unless I just have a fancy for watching a meh movie. But overall, I won't remember it after I finish this review. Speaking of which, what was I talking about? Oh, I don't know. Anyway, my hunters, I will see you later for whatever review this is, and I'll see you again sometime. Also, if you like this, do subscribe. At this point, I'm only at least 1 subs away from 100. That is a feat, and I promise you I will do a special review at the time of this recording. follow my Twitter. I'm always on there and I post about things, my opinions, other likes of other YouTubers or artists I follow, or even some of my friends' YouTube videos that they do. I always do follow me on my Discord down below. I'm always on there with my friends, just talking about geeky stuff and other things, depends on what strikes the mood. And subscribe to my Patreon, because if you want to help me continue making these videos, at least $1 a month would help me a lot. You don't know. You could always help this poor hunter out and basically get better equipment. But anyway, besides my begging aside for more cash, I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. And as I always say, may the good blood guide your way.